watching.
WESN.
Take some time for yourself or spend some time with the family at Sandy Point Village Hotel. Enjoy our various studio and suite apartments, self-contained with their own kitchenettes and Wi-Fi. We also have our famous 100-foot swimming pool and our beachfront restaurant, The Steak and Lobster Grill. And our location in Crown Point puts us near the center of activity from the nylon pool to the local nightlife. Call us and make your reservations at 639-8533, 389-2378 or email us at sandypointvillagehotel@gmail.com.
The home of Caribbean content is growing and we welcome you to be a part of the #1 platform for young personalities who are driven to make a positive impact in society. As we continue to reach every corner of Trinidad and Tobago through our daily broadcasts, our social media pages, or through our 75+ digital billboards across the nation, contact us to learn about our competitive rates via marketing at wesncc.com or call us at 628-5835. WESN Content Capital, television with a difference.
WESN.
Welcome once again from the Sister Isle Show. Michael Small here. This is talking about the WSND Content Capital, and well, we have some updates to some stories. Some might give us maybe pointing us to a resolution. Others seems more like a little bit of a smoke screen, at least to some extent. One of those stories being the whole situation with the schoolgirl, graduated schoolgirl, former schoolgirl, to a social event, end of year social event. The word prom has been used, and I don't think I would have ever lived to see our graduation. That's what we used to call it, right? Grad. Regardless, a young lady dressed for grad, dressed for prom, what have you. A police vehicle was utilized to transport her. Now the police has come out to basically say, well, it was authorized. The quote is these outreach efforts form a critical part of the police's objective to strengthen relationships with communities, foster transparency, reinforce legitimacy in law enforcement operations. Now, you can maybe get away with the first one, strengthen relationships. The foster transparency and reinforce legitimacy in law enforcement operations. Maybe you could have said those things as it's part of the outreach effort, which does that. And in this case, this is what applies to this case. But by kind of just saying generally what your outreach plan wants to do, you're using your outreach plan to defend a situation that arguably doesn't have that much to do with the objectives of your outreach plan. Because while the Commissioner of Police could try to commend the drivers for being ambassadors, nothing is said to what I believe to be the public outcry. You don't have vehicles. Vehicles are not available. People have issues and call in, and the excuse is vehicles are not available. But we have the availability in order to provide transportation for a social event, not to respond to an emergency, not to respond to a citizen's concern. And the disconnect there. Granted, yes, where the person is calling and is getting stonewall might be a totally different station, totally different division. But it's the optics of the situation that I think the police service is maybe underestimating. And this could be a weakness of the current commissioner because that's not his strong suit. And to be fair, you would rather this not be his strong suit than actual operations not be his strong suit, right? Let me make that clear. I'm not saying that we need a guy that's a better used car salesman as commissioner of police. That said, the explanation by the police doesn't actually, I think, do anything to speak to the public outcry on the matter, right? How is this proper use of police resources? More details into maybe how this transportation effort would have had little impact on the availability of the police vehicle in the area. Because, hey, we pick up, we drop her off, it was 10 minutes, 15 minutes, whatever, not that bad, right? At least give us that explanation. But they didn't go into the details. They just saying, well, community engagement. That's nice, but at nighttime, we have an issue with the public having more concerns about police cars being available to respond to emergencies and not for community outreach for graduation. So this explanation to me is a non-explanation, to be honest. It doesn't speak to anything. It doesn't actually deal with anything. It just says, oh, it was authorized. How? Why? To what end? Because this is not that big of a deal. This does not give you that much return on investment when it comes to community outreach. Congrats, you have successfully done one relatively minor thing for one member of the population with a piece of police equipment, which the population regularly gets told we don't have enough of. That's a good look. That really helps with your community outreach, doesn't it? That really makes a difference. That gives us the confidence that you know what you're doing. Because we rather you help us out with social engagements than respond to crime. I'm not saying this is how it actually is. I'm saying this is the optics that the police service has, at least according to the reports of one newspaper, set up. And in the field of public relations, this is not a win. This is potentially a pretty unnecessary, though minor, failure. Last thing I want to get to before we'll take a break and welcome our guests. The court has decided to order the immediate release of the attorney who was detained for potentially or under the suspicion of harboring a fugitive. This is the murder accused for Candace Honoré. Now, basically the judge said, you haven't charged him with anything, you can't hold him forever, you have to release him. So this is more or less how I expected it to go. I assume they couldn't charge her with anything because they needed evidence of a thing. It's similar to the police commissioner. And you don't actually, at least they didn't actually have a case, it seemed. So it's a rather subjective thing, and maybe it's a gray area because, again, he's a defense attorney. How is he supposed to turn on his clients? If he was trying to actively help his client escape the police, that's a whole different story, right? But for all we know, he could have now reached, or the attorney could have been telling his client, you need to turn yourself in, right? So to prove that he was harboring a fugitive, to what end, right? To prove that, I don't think it's pretty easy. But I understand why the police did it. This is just the eventual outcome as I expected. And maybe the only thing you could criticize police for is trying to fight down and find something here. I get it, it's subjective with regards to what the attorney did. In my opinion, I'm not a lawyer, so a legal mind might fully disagree with me, but this more or less ended up how I expected. All right, let's take a break. When we come back, we'll be joined by our guests, also not on location, but from his location. It'll be interesting, talking point from Tobago to the nation. Stay tuned, we'll be right back after this.
Low energy? Heart concerns? Migraines slowing you down? It's time to take control of your health. Join Wellness Unlocked, the series that brings expert advice and real solutions for a healthier you. In our latest episode, learn how Jameson CoQ10 can help support heart health, boost energy, and even reduce migraines. Get the science, the stories, and the steps to power up your health with CoQ10. Don't miss Wellness Unlocked. Watch now on WESN and start your wellness journey today.
Do you need treatment for obesity or any related abdominal procedures? The community hospital now offers minimally invasive laparoscopic surgery done by an American-trained, board-certified surgeon with over 20 years' experience. Give us a call at 235-5479 for more information.
The Community Hospital of Seventh-day Adventist,
where good private health care is affordable.
If these walls could talk, they'd cry uncle. They didn't plan to become offices or yoga studios. But they've stood by us, even when we got a little stir-crazy. For that, they deserve some thanks. They deserve Benjamin Moore.
SM Group International Limited, your solutions partner for the latest innovations, brands, and competent staff to meet your needs. We provide products and services in the following divisions: executive services, event rental and services, power and heavy equipment, construction and property management, food and beverage, aggregate and sales and distribution. Check out more on our products and services at www.smgrouptt.com. Contact us at 221-7445 or email at info@smgrouptt.com. We are SM Group International, your solutions partner.
The best birthday gifts are at dbesttoys.com. Shop for the best brands you love at the best prices, like VTech, Leapfrog, Fisher-Price, Play-Doh, Hot Wheels, Barbie, Cocomelon, LOL, Baby Alive, Crayola. Visit us in-store at Forces Flagship MacBean. Shop online now at dbesttoys.com. Order via call or WhatsApp at 32DBEST to order. And remember, we have the best toys at the best prices.
Our award-winning show is back, and this season promises to be even more exciting than before. What's Up, Doc isn't just a title. It's a call to action for anyone who wants to improve their health and well-being. Join us on this thrilling ride towards better health on WESN Content Capital.
Pastor Jay, I want to get a tattoo.
You really want
to me. Respond to me how you would respond to me.
The first question I'll ask is why?
Controversial taboo topics.
We get so consumed by church, we forget that we have to live the life of being a Christian. outside of the Sunday
Like you say,
services.
we think going to a service makes us a Christian.
Exactly.
Yeah. Right. So here we are about to hear the second time Pastor J wanted to take a tattoo.
Would have been late last year and early this year.
Oh gosh.
Hope Unfiltered podcast with Pastor J and Ren.
This is 10 Questions. I'm Andy Johnson. The distance from where we should be in the world in going forward on our commitments with climate change.
The effects of climate change that cannot be accounted for. It's called loss and damage. And we're seeing loss and damage happening so much more in this decade and the previous decade.
The principal term there was this question of the correspondent banking issues.
That is why we're trying to build capacity with this country here, Trinidad and Tobago, and other countries in the region.
Man is not showing any signs of stopping or even slowing down. More than half of the forest in Trinidad is already gone.
All the plants and all the animals and all of the nice clean water and fresh air and everything had to be on this planet for humanity to have a chance.
We have small change when it comes to countries that can take decisions, and when they speak, the world listens.
The General Assembly is a very democratic forum. And Trinidad and Tobago has the same vote as Canada, in spite of the obvious difference in size.
And we're back here on Talking About the WESN. Sean Michael Small from the Sister Isle, joined by Dr. Shane Mohammed from the Sister Isle. And this might actually be the first time in Talking Points history where it's almost fully based in Tobago. If only we could get master control, I'll never hear the end of this one. If we could get master control here as well, then it would more or less be a fully Tobago Talking Point operation. But c'est la vie, gentlemen. Unfortunately, you all are over there, but we're over here. And from different locations, of course. I am at Sandy Point, and Dr. Mohammed, I believe, is on the Stobe local road, Stobe O Road there at an establishment. Welcome, Dr. Mohammed, to this full Tobago edition. And I think we just lost him, literally as I said welcome. I think we have him back. Dr. Mohammed, you with us? Okay, while we wait on Dr. Mohammed, I will continue going down the line of our stories there. And there's another interesting case that I should speak to. Dr. Mohammed, if you could hear me, you're muted. Probably doesn't have audio. So while we wait, there's another situation in the courts that I do think is important for us to fully understand, and that is with regards to eyewitness testimony. Eyewitness testimony not always being the most reliable, because there was a situation where a man identified two suspects in a murder case, and one of these individuals was on trial, sorry. And essentially what happened was, before the matter proceeded to the courts, the witness actually wanted to recant his testimony. And it seemed as though the police, according to his reports, did not take him on. And he basically had to wait for the trial in order to then show up at court. The prosecutors essentially were trying to have his testimony, the written recording of his previous testimony, his initial testimony, presented at trial, but when he showed up, they couldn't do that. And basically he was advised by Justice of the Peace, if the authorities that are prosecuting matter are not going to listen to you, go to the trial. Essentially, right? I'm cutting out a lot here. And because of his testimony, his verbal testimony, what he said previously basically didn't matter anymore. The state didn't have any other evidence, from what I understand, and the judge basically had to dismiss the case. The accused was acquitted of all charges because basically he believed the other person, he believed misidentified because he had an ankle bracelet on, and the person who was under trial, there was video footage to prove he was somewhere else. So because of that, the witness wanted to recant his statements, and now this brings up a question, yes, of exactly how much did the police and prosecutors know, and how much did they willfully ignore? Did they assume that the witness was potentially compromised in some way, or did they just not do their due diligence? Because the witness is basically saying, I was wrong, and I have video footage to prove I was wrong, so I can't keep saying that he was there. And to his credit, it's not like he had multiple instances of giving testimony that was incorrect. Once he knew he was wrong, he tried to rectify it. So to what extent did the authorities make a mistake or willfully decided to ignore and not do their due diligence in this process? And this is why eyewitness testimony is a tricky thing, particularly if that's all you got for something like murder or anything else that needs to be beyond a reasonable doubt. Now, with that said, let's try this again. Coming from the sister aisle for the full, I know that he heard the whole spiel, so I won't repeat it. Dr. Sheikh Mohammed from Tobago, Sean Michael Small in Tobago. Welcome, Dr. Mohammed. Did we lose him again? Dr. Mohammed, welcome. Are you there?
Good morning. Good morning.
Thank you, audio.
Tobago. I'm here. My audio is good. Hello?
Okay, we seem to have some minor audio technical difficulties with Dr. Mohammed. We'll try and sort that out. As that is sorted out, we'll bring him in. And of course, there's a lot of stuff to talk about that we have to get through. Hopefully, we could at least touch on some of it today. Now, while we hopefully try and get Dr. Mohammed back, we have another situation. Of course, I've been speaking about the prison service. And the prison service is just one of those things where nobody wants to be criticized. I understand. I think the problem is the prison service and the Prison Service Association needs to understand the reality of where they're at. It's almost like they themselves are more concerned about the politics of the situation than the actual practical needs of the situation. Because we're not hearing necessarily about the Prison Service Association saying, hey, we have to improve things. Hey, this ain't good. They're being very defensive right now in a situation that is arguably indefensible. So now, and there's more to this. I mean, so now the association, they're raising the alarm over what it describes as poor coordination, inadequate preparation, lack of respect for the SOE, right? And basically saying, well, no provision was made to accommodate us, which I believe prison officers have to guard the relocated prisoners, right? Whereas one would have thought it would have been soldiers and or police. But the trick with that is, Dr. Mohammed, are you with us? I see you with us.
I am. I think I am, yeah.
I'm still not hearing you.
I am hearing you clearly. I am hearing you clearly.
You're hearing me. I'm not hearing you. Could anyone tell me if the audience is hearing him? Wow.
Are you all hearing me?
Well, okay, everyone else is hearing you. I'm not hearing you, which is a hell of a way to live. Okay. I
Great.
From my end. Dr. Mohammed.
I'm hearing you now.
Yeah, there we go. Okay. You're now hearing me.
I'm hearing you. I was hearing you all the time.
All right. Yes, because I saw my whole introduction you heard. And I was now talking about the prisons, and I do believe, I actually might have forgot this morning, but I do believe this is one aspect of the SOE that you wanted to speak about. So we could start there. Because they just had a situation yesterday, I believe, a prisoner actually escaped. So one aspect that I have over this whole SOE is the prison service, to some extent, being defensive, while a prisoner escaped during an SOE. And the police, I believe, yesterday, because of a voice note that went out, had to raid the maximum security prison sometime yesterday again and had to confiscate more cell phones again. And this whole situation is a bit of a mess. Now, there might be reasons for this mess. I don't know if you want to go into it.
I don't necessarily want to go into the reasons for the mess as per why we are where we are with regards to the SOE, but I would say that my concern is that I know that the previous administration dismantled the Ministry of Justice, and the Ministry of Justice under the People's Partnership had a specific role and function for that ministry as it pertained to the criminal justice system and as a whole, so a holistic approach to the criminal justice system, one of which included several agencies of the state prisons, the Immigration Detention Center, the Police Complaints Authority, the Workmen's Compensation Board, the Legal Aid Advisory Authority, all of which I believe by the schedule put into the Gazette now falls again under the remit of the Ministry of Justice. My thing about it is this: the idea that Dr. Rowley, as Prime Minister, in his wisdom or lack thereof, saw it fit to dismantle the Ministry of Justice, citing that he didn't see the need for a Ministry of Justice. Mind you, there are jurisdictions in the region like Jamaica that has a very successful Ministry of Justice. At the time of Mrs. Prasad Bissasa's first term in office, I believe the minister was Goulding, not Bruce. I can't remember his first name at this point, but I believe he's currently the opposition leader in Jamaica. So the thing about it is a lot of went in, a lot of infrastructure went in, and I believe one of the critical aspects that the prison service requires is, from a ministry's perspective, is support, administrative support, managing support, management support. And one of the critical departments or units within the Ministry of Justice that I know liaised very closely to the prison with the prison service was the monitoring and evaluation unit. Now, when I think about the Ministry of Justice and the work that it did with regard to prisons before, one of it was prison reform. Second part of it was, ensuring that the prisons were safer, ensuring that they were well monitored by security cameras, modern technology, that there were these cell phone jammers that would have been able to intercept connections, illegal connections in the prisons. So there was a host of mechanisms in place to support the prison service to make it a jail, as have been put into the, has been said in the public domain, that a jail should be a jail. It's a place of incarceration. It's not a place of vacation at the expense of, taxpayers' dollars. So my concern here is that even if they dismantled the Ministry of Justice and they went back to the Ministry of National Security, the Attorney General of Legal Affairs, and they combined these ministries, there were several ministers within the Ministry of Justice, Ministry of National Security under the previous administration what was the issue of delegating one of these ministers with the responsibility for specifically justice, and by extension, criminal justice, the prison services, and all these state institutions and entities that come together to form to ensure that the criminal justice system is actually working. I mean, that's my concern. That is it that in the aftermath of the general election that we are now seeing where the cracks in government, where the gaps in government, where the flaws in governance was, and this government may very well be starting over from scratch.
Well, the thing is, I have been complaining about issues within the whole apparatus, from the prison service, yes, but in a way it was actually more glaring with the Coast Guard, with the Defense Force, with the Air Guard. When I say Defense Force, I mean the regiments. You could also throw in then the Fire Service issues in there, right? And then also, you said the Ministry of Justice directly had to do with the Police Complaints Authority. And I'm looking at the Police Complaints Authority and I'm like, I don't really fully see the point of it anymore, because we have this toothless tiger that, yes, they could say things to the media, but outside of that, it doesn't seem like they have that much impact on the situation. And I'm not saying it's necessarily their fault.
That might be linked to the amount of government support that they are given. And they have, I can explicitly remember that one of the things that was done is that there were consistent meetings between the ministry and its agencies. One of its key partners was the Police Complaints Authority, of which the chairman at the time, the director at the time, the director at that time is now Appeal Court Judge Gillian Lockie. So, I mean, we need to, we're in a system where, one of the things that I think we should consider in constitutional reform, given that this administration has a constitutional majority, with a 3/5 majority can do a lot of work, is that we need to have agencies or persons in politics and in legislation and key stakeholders sit down and streamline ministries so that we have a cluster effect. One, we have a cyclical and intersectional sort of leadership and synergies between ministries, so that we can have governance at a more effective manner. Far too often we find that in the past, ministers have been operating in silos, and therefore, it comes with the position, it comes with the authority, it comes with it's a natural expectation to happen in leadership and in ministry, within ministries. But at some point in time, when, as I like to say, when ministers warm the seat and they get accustomed to they get a footing, there's going to have to be dialogue between ministries and ministers about certain projects, because you may find that a project might be intersectional and it may be interlinked, and there may be an intersection there. Now, let me give you an example. The issue of homes for the elderly and homes for those that are mentally disabled, those who are suffering from mental health issues, is straddling both ministries because of the two different acts of parliament. So on the one hand, it's straddling the Ministry of Health, and on the other hand, it's straddling the Ministry of Social Development. So at some point in time, not that I'm advocating, and let me make it lucidly clear that I'm not advocating for the Minister of Social Development to lose a job, but there has to be some level of transferring of responsibilities, either from social development to health, or from health to social development, so that we can have that synergy working more effectively. Because I gather that the Prime Minister has created these clusters of ministers to ensure that there's more connectivity, more conversations, more efficiency and effectiveness in the delivery of governance. So, It's a task. It's a serious task. There has to be the political will that is needed, and the vision must be innovative. It must be creative. It must be transformative. And I was reading just before I came on. I was reading an article. I was reading a post by Amy Brown, who was quoting the Prime Minister at I think it was her inauguration as Prime Minister. And it's a simple thing. I don't understand why, and I've made this point I think in another article. I said that I am, as a political scientist, I am not going to be swift and running to the forefront to chastise the government, because governments have strategies, and we're not even 100 days into this government yet. Therefore, there are things, and we all know it's practice. The first 100 days in government is an opportunity for government to start the formulation of policies, seeking and fact-finding, understanding where the former government was, what the former government did, where the country is as it stands now, etc., etc., etc. Point is this: I think that even where the comment was made that a minister refused to answer, a minister has opted for a no comment, I think that's sometimes the disciplined thing to do. That if a judgment, or as the case may be, a matter arises and it requires a minister to not answer or respond quickly at the mic, then we should give them the opportunity to respond when the time is right. It seems as though we have had 10 years of certain behaviors and certain practices in governance and in government. One of it was poor communication. I don't think that, at the risk of sounding quite biased, the opposition, does not have the moral authority to school the government on communication, especially when their mode of communication was quite poor.
Yeah, my only thing is, now, as someone who criticized the PNM administration of certain things, my only thing is I am seeing some individuals make some of the same mistakes, and I attribute that. I think I started to see the phenomenon even with the now TPP, then PDP, where it seems as though politicians in that certain sort of environment will be tempted to utilize certain communication strategies, let's call them that, because of the pressures of the environment. And while I understand it's not necessarily, well, we're all twirly mustache nefarious villains, but it's more like human nature is going to push you in a direction which we technically complain about and criticize. So I have to, be fair and do the same when I see it done by the current administration. But I will say it's not all, and we are within still that 100 days. My only issue is the current government needs to be careful about, if they want to take praise for any new happenings, they need to kind of be a bit more detailed to show, hey, we actually changed something now to get this done, as opposed to, well, we have this new thing. Yeah, but to what extent is that a holdover? Because not all of these things are short-term deliverables. Some of these things are potentially long-term deliverables, and, not saying give credit to the previous administration, oh, look how good they were. It's just, it probably came from that time frame. That's my only thing.
No, you're right. But let me give you an example of one of that. The main example for that would be, if I'm not mistaken, the ability for us to renew our driver's license online went live last week of maybe Friday or so. It went live, and all I saw was a press release or some sort of communication from the Ministry of Transport and Civil Aviation, which said simply that the ability to renew your driver's license is now online, it's now live, and this is a process of doing it, and these are the documents that you would need to get it done, and you can go ahead and do such. I didn't see a minister. I didn't see a government. I didn't see anybody say, this is your government working for you, because it is a flow over from the last administration, right?
My thing is...
But I do know though, Sean, that there are agents of the former administration who seems to be in consistent battle mode, where it is necessary for them to say, well, this was done or implemented under the former Minister of Transport, Works and Transport, blah blah blah. I don't think anybody in this country is going to deny the fact that our ability to use IT and technology to do certain transactions now would have just happened in the last 60, 70 days, right? Well, come Monday, it would be 90 days. So, I mean, it's preposterous to think so, but it seems as if that there are agents now, more than it was before, who are trying to ensure that the opposition maintains relevance in the political space. And I think part of that is because there's an acknowledgement that the opposition is in a worse off state than we anticipate or thought of. And therefore, anything that emerges, which is, as I like your phrase, a flow over from the last administration, is going to be seen as, well, we did that. The country doesn't remember if you did it, because unfortunately, a lot of basic things like simply cleaning the drains in and around the country was not done. So whoop-de-doo, we could renew our driver's permits online, but God help us if rain falls for 12 hours straight.
Well, and that's the thing. I didn't want to make it seem as though it was big ups to the previous administration, because I think I might be one of the people that's like, oh no, I think from the jump, this was really, really bad. And I don't understand how political strategists in the PNM cannot craft a strategy to acknowledge and account and try to work from that, as opposed to wherever they think they're working from now. My thing is, with regards to communication, the current administration, I guess it would be better, more detail is better. And more detail in, hey, we're delivering this, look how, and part of it is more details potentially allows you to boast. Like, I thought it was one hell of a PR coup when Minister Khadija Amin and Minister Jerlyn John were more or less on the front line dealing with flooding. And listen, it's probably more complicated than that, but the optics, right? Yes, maybe it wasn't that much rainfall that they had to deal with. I don't know, the technical details this might be an oversimplification. But optically it was, well, we kind of started to deal with flooding, and we kind of started to get significant results on flooding, and it wasn't that hard. And where did the other guys go wrong? So that's just it. Like, as they're early into the game, I hope they don't fall into the pattern of, well, less talk is safer, so let's just talk less and give less details. And eventually, I think that kind of puts you behind the curve, and you over-rely on that sort of PR strategy, and you kind of end up where you end up. But I want to go back to what you said about the Ministry of Justice. There are two questions to ask. One is somewhat obvious. One is also obvious, but maybe a bit important to get through. And I'll start with that one. Were there things in place before the Ministry of Justice to carry out some of these functions? Because the implication is, when it was gotten rid of by Dr. Keith Rowley, is it that he just assumed that what was there before will be in place? Or was it that there wasn't really, either that didn't happen, or there wasn't really anything in place for some of these functions before in the first place, and we got this significant deficiency in administration? Because that's one of the unsexy parts of paramilitary national security. It's not just about the guns and the bulletproof vests and the vehicles, it's also about the paperwork and doing it properly.
So, I mean, So when the Ministry of Justice was created, there's a lot of legislation that they would have. I mean, they were also heavily legislative framework. So there was a very strong, and kudos to the ministers then. I mean, ministers, well, Herbert Volney and then Minister President Moore. They were the first and second ministers of justice, and they would have carried through with the delivery of certain acts, bills that were required. So, for example, I always say that the greatest faux pas in this country was Section 34, and the strong belief today that Section 34 somehow was bad law. There was a lot of work that went into understanding how criminal justice systems across the world work. So there was fact-finding in St. Lucia, there was fact-finding in Canada, there was fact-finding in Jamaica, there was fact-finding of structures and frameworks in Sri Lanka, in India, in the British Isles, in Australia. The Minister of Justice back then hosted ministers of justice and attorneys general in Trinidad and Tobago to start the ball rolling as a huge international think tank to get this thing off of the ground. There was a lot of work that went into it. The thing about it is, a lot of people believe that somehow Section 34 captured just simply the elites that are in the system, and that's the thing from the truth. It captured everybody who had a matter pending for over 10 to 15 years and had not moved an inch from being in the system. And that is what the registry that would have taken effect from the 2nd of August would have done, because all matters would have been captured in this registry's database, and it would have been ready for action by the judiciary from the minute the law term opened in September. And these people, and I mean these people, the PNM, went berserk on it, and, it was retracted. But the Administration of Justice Preliminaries Inquiries Act, I think they call it a JIPA. I mean, Forrest Awari and Stuart Young is always talking about a JIPA. But a JIPA, one, under the PNM became watered down. 2, there were several amendments to it. And 3, they will never give credit that the foundations of that act was the brainchild of the work of Crestline Moore and Herbert Volney. Now, that's just one part of it. But all of the agencies that received direct support from a justice minister, a permanent secretary for justice, and all of the technocrats that supported the Ministry of Justice also 100% gave support to all of these agencies. So there would be meetings of the executive of the Ministry of Justice, but that included Prisons Commissioner, Director of Police Complaints Authority, Legal and Aid and Advisory Authority, and the list goes on and on. In fact, so important was access to justice as it pertains to legal aid, as it pertains to Police Complaints Authority, whatnot. There was a soft opening of those agencies here in Tobago, right down in Scarborough. And it was a huge accomplishment because it had been the first time that those offices really got a chance to be rooted in Scarborough. People in Tobago had access to them, so there was no need to. It was an attempt to also remove the bureaucracy in the delivery of services. So, when you have to, and I credit Kamala Prasad-Bissessar then, as she has now, with having the vision for streamlining certain ministries, because there is a need for there to be more dialogue, more engagement, more interactions, more conversations, and more streamlining of items that directly affects the daily lives of citizens. So while it is, I understand that on the one hand, where Dr. Rowley wanted to, pull it back together and make it into one big ministry, what he did is that, and it's been proven, where there are large ministries with extensive portfolios within it, run by just 2 ministers, there are things that are going to get lost in the governance process, right? So, and that's what happened.
Well, of course, the other obvious question is, and we already know part of the answer based on what was said at the formation of cabinet. The current Ministry of Justice, of course, we know it's there to help deal with the backlog of cases, right? As you pointed out, which was one of the functions in the previous partnership administration. But those other services to support things like the PC and the prison service, is that continuing now? Because I'm not entirely sure.
Yes.
Okay.
If you look at the Trinidad Gazette, it has been gazetted, and the schedule for the Ministry of Justice actually is available. And thankfully, it has been restored to what it was before. And I expect, even with this Minister of Justice, Devish, that there's going to be a lot of work. I mean, there's going to be some starting from scratch again. That's unfortunate, but there's going to also be the opportunity for him to chart a way forward for the Ministry of Justice to stay established in the next 5 years. I would suggest, though, that in our conversations about and our think tanking about constitutional reform, I think one of the things that we should focus on is, one, ministries should be entrenched in the Constitution, and it should be established clinically and reasonably, so that we don't have this consistent changing of the names of ministries and configurations of ministries. But after all of these years of independence and just falling short of 50 years of republicanism in 2025, I think that it's time that we just make it an entrenched system where the Ministry of the Attorney General will have this as its portfolio with responsibilities for this. The Ministry of Legal Affairs will have this, and so forth. And if in the future there's a need for adjustments by whatever reason, the creation of a new agency or whatnot, then we could always think about incorporating it into the schedule and whatnot by maybe a simple vote in Parliament, right? Or some sort of dialoguing, correspondence or consultation between Prime Minister, opposition leader, and President. But we really and truly need to start thinking outside the box and think innovatively. The word innovation is always pushed around in governance and in government, but I want to see innovation become not an adjective, but more of a verb. Well, in fact, another word that I'm looking forward to see become a verb rather than an adjective or a noun is the word diversification.
Well, here's the thing. Before we get into the other topic, I just want to touch on this there, because the more I look into the state of the country, innovation is just like that. This is the thing. You want them to both be in a certain spot. The irony is they both are in the same spot right now, which is to say they don't really exist in this country. And the thing with innovation is, not only do we not have innovation on the public side, the government side, but I would argue we have nowhere near enough innovation, if any at all, because I don't really see it. Yes, you might have some small entrepreneurs with good ideas. You don't really see it at the largest levels, really. You don't see innovation from your private sector, right? There's no innovative way to either, one, find new processes, find new products, find new services, find new business models in order to meet with our specific challenges. Rather, it is, what can we import, whether it's a good to retail or a business plan or a business process or a technology that is not necessarily going to give us anything new, give us any new means to try to solve our problems. And innovation in TNT, I mean, yes, this is sad because we created Steel Pan, we created Limbo, we created Calypso. So culturally, we've innovated. And maybe that might be the only area where there's any kind of innovation. But even then, I would argue our ability to commercialize the industry of performing arts and entertainment has been limited, and dare I say, we, you know, the innovation there is relatively non-existent. So I do have to ask, because technically you're not just limited to political science, just with this one thing, you know, what do you see we need to do to try to become more innovative as a people? Because we're too much of a, hey, why so serious, you know, take a drink, have a lime, you know, we chip in, we jam in still. Like, when you think of TNT's culture, you don't think of, hey, you know, what innovative new idea we could come up with today. Like, culturally, that's just not where we're at. And I don't even know if people want to be there, because, you know, that will take a significant culture shift.
So I took a walk through TIC last week, and TIC in 2025 was humongous. So kudos to the Manufacturers Association and its stakeholders on that. But one of the things that I think I found stood out to me is that the Minister of Trade, Industry and Tourism, he and the Parliamentary Secretary, as well as several ministers, Labour, you name it, but he's specifically the Minister of Trade. The Minister of Trade just didn't simply show up at the opening ceremony of TIC, deliver a fantastic speech, walk around on the first day, and then disappear to his ivory tower. No, I have heard consistently that people said, wow, you know, and those of us who've been in politics and been around the politics for a long time knows the minister by not just we know him as Kama. And so there's a conversation where, you know, where persons were saying they were impressed that Minister Maraj took the time to be in TIC in those 3 days that it existed. There were other people that knows him from the politics, knows him from the business sector, who said, you know, Kama was really impressive because he really was there. He was interacting with exhibitors. He was talking. He was asking questions. And one of the things that I think I raised in a conversation with one of the execs at from the Manufacturers Association is that the Special Economic Zones Authority, which is now CESA, which used to be the Trinidad and Tobago Free Zone Companies Limited, did in the last 10 years was, and this only happened a couple of months before the general election, was really and truly change the act, a separate office for them, which existed, and then it was time for them to leave the office. But I have suggested to the persons of Manufacturers Association that one of the things that needs to be utilized greater in our thrust towards diversification and innovation is that we have special economic zones existing across the e-tech parks, industrial parks in Trinidad and Tobago, and there are facilities that exist even when I was a member of the board of the Trinidad and Tobago Free Zones Company Limited. So what I think needs to happen, and there needs to be a synergy between the Ministry of Trade, Industry and Tourism, the Special Economic Zones Authority, e-tech, and the Manufacturers Association, to be, as well as any entity that represents small and micro enterprises, including creatives, and we should allow them the opportunity to take up a space at the e-tech parks and be able to support local, be able to produce, whether they turn it into warehousing, whether they turn it in a space like a workshop, or, you know, utilize it for manufacturing purposes. But we should give them that opportunity. And when I moved away from, well, when I was replaced in 2016, the board of the Trinidad and Tobago Free Zone Company Limited was reduced from 9 members to just 3. And, you know, I think that was one of the greatest injustices of a very critical area that we needed, because diversity, it forms a major part of the diversification trust and a very major part of the innovation thrust towards, you know, governance in Trinidad and Tobago. So that's one of the things I think we can do, that if we allow, and then we should go shopping, Sean. I support going shopping across the globe. I support the Global South Initiative. The South-South Initiative is a very important thing for Trinidad and Tobago. And I believe that the global south is a very important, in 2025, it's very critical to the geoeconomics and geopolitics of which we live in today. And I was very happy to hear Prime Minister Modi talk about the importance of the Global South Initiative. And I think that is one of the things that Trinidad and Tobago should aggressively get involved in, because there's much potential for not just having persons come here and invest in Trinidad and Tobago, but it's also very important for Trinidad and Tobago to also go out there and invest our human capital resources experience in other nations, especially countries that are emerging in certain industries that we would have expertise in for the last umpteen years. So that is just two of the things that I envisioned. And then while Prime Minister Modi was here, I was thinking, well, we already have a good relationship with Brazil. We have an excellent relationship with China. We have a good relationship with South Africa and India. Then why shouldn't Trinidad and Tobago now consider becoming a member of BRICS? Because BRICS has expanded it's from having just the BRS nation to having so many other nations apply and be accepted into BRICS. I think it's not impossible for Trinidad and Tobago to become a member of BRICS, because there's also opportunity there. And there's going to come a time where we are going to have to seek investment opportunities outside of our regular, it's not business as usual. So therefore, outside of our regular international stakeholders, there's opportunity and we should take it. And then the other aspect that I think when we should think about innovation is that there's agricultural technology and it is innovation in agriculture. And the University of the West Indies, the University of Trinidad and Tobago, both universities sitting in Trinidad and Tobago that have programs that focuses on agriculture. I would, for once and for all, like to see the graduates of agriculture in Trinidad and Tobago be invested in the agriculture sector. And if need be, we could partner with outside universities in the United States, for example, where agriculture technology and agriculture, actual science in agriculture. I've listened to presentations from students in countries in states like Iowa and Kentucky talk about the studies that they have embarked upon, the discoveries that they have been able to make in their academic journeys in agriculture science and in agricultural technologies, right? So those are just two, but I would really like to see those are just three, maybe four I talked about, but those are the areas that I think are critical for us to be able to just jump on and be a part of. I think the will of prosperity is the fingertips and at the political will of all politicians and especially of this current complement of ministers. And I think they should stop waiting on the Prime Minister to drive the policy. They should read the manifestos, listen to the speeches, and just run out there and get what's needed.
I'll say this. While politically I'm a bit wary of BRICS in some ways, with regards to the economic parts of it, I actually think there's nothing to lose there, because the BRICS as an economic body is not necessarily reflective of the international politics of each member. And we could keep our diplomatic alliances and even our trade agreements with currently and still try to expand with the BRICS members. I will say there's two things. One, with regards to agriculture, one of the things that I'm concerned about is so much of it, the raw materials we have to import, the feed, the eggs, I guess maybe potentially how much seeds. And I know that in the States and the like, farmers, they don't own the seeds. You have to pay for the seeds. You have to buy the seeds from some manufacturer or whatever. I don't know if we have to go to that rigmarole, but I think maybe for the region, we have a university. I know they do this kind of work. To what extent can we develop our own crops, right? So that we have ownership and we don't have to import certain raw materials for whatever it is. Develop our own line of eggs or chickens so that we don't have to import. It's kind of ridiculous when you think about it. We don't actually make it from scratch, right? And
I agree with
food security. that's a big thing. The other thing is I do think CARICOM is an opportunity to try to have a pseudo-domestic market to help with economies of scale. Don't ask me to go into...
I think right now, Sean, CARICOM is facing a challenge, and one of the major challenges that CARICOM is facing, which did not just exist now. This has been in the making. If anybody has been paying attention to CARICOM and regional politics specifically, I'm very concerned about what I'm hearing from Prime Minister Gonzalez as it pertains to the role of the OECS.
Right,
and the most recent conversation about the OECS possibly exploring breaking away from CARICOM and standing as on its own as an entity of these 6 nations because they share common goals, the level of commonalities that they share. They believe strongly that they could advocate for themselves to the world. Now, that's one. I understand that, but I think that there are institutions of CARICOM that have been developed since its formation in 1973, and we need to examine who we are from a regional perspective and be honest with ourselves as to whether
we may have, see if we have internet trouble with Dr. Mohammed. I'm still seeing him as connected. May have frozen there.
With regard to agriculture and how.
Sorry, Dr. Mohammed, are you there?
You still hearing me?
Yeah, you froze for a second there. You were speaking about the OECS.
Yeah, Yeah, my concern was I was saying that I think one of the concerns I have with the OECS is that they have so many commonalities among themselves that it may end up being that they feel that they can advocate for themselves as six countries with similarities to the international world. And I am saying that I think we need to realistically sit down and have the conversation, a very difficult one, as to whether or not CARICOM has met its objectives from 1973 to now, including, we're still struggling with the CCJ, we're still struggling with several institutions of the region. And when you look at the institutions of the region, it's not that they're bad, it's just that I don't think we even teach it in the schools anymore about what the different sub-agencies of CARICOM are and what they do and its importance to the region and importance to our people. So there's that conversation as well that we need to have.
I think ultimately, to me, the greatest goal of the region, so CARICOM is just the body, would be we have issues with economies of scale, we have issues with certain countries aren't big enough for certain services. So the idea, I'm not too worried about political advocacy and international agreements, but rather just to say, well, look, we're all small countries, and that comes with certain challenges. And it's not easy to band together because we're separate islands, but it will afford us certain things, right? If we could do things as a region, if the OECS wants to kind of be the one thing, they could still be the OECS within whatever that framework is. But to try and fight certain economic realities on your own, at some point is an uphill battle that, to me, doesn't make sense that we kind of try to worry more about our sovereignty than our economic development. And this doesn't have to be, again, we're not talking about governance. This is all just economics. I think we're kind of losing out on what could be, right? We don't have to go full EU. We don't have to try to be a G7 or a NATO or a BRICS or what have you, or what the OECS wants to be. Just to, yes, the single market economy is part of that, but I feel like we're not doing enough to really try and leverage, all right, we have a region. What if we have our own, we push further economic development based on operating as a region, kind of doing, okay, we don't all need to offer these services. Maybe one island has medical specialists in this field, another island's medical specialists in that field, because it's economics that dictate about things like that. Certain science, certain forensic services, certain business services, certain production services and production lines. And then it's almost like the global village of trade, but on a smaller scale, to try to get our capacity up for economic activity. I think that's one of the things. We ourselves, our manufacturing sector, we wanted to grow. If we could start with the region, then we could move on to get to the economies of scale to compete globally. That's just my very, very surface level thoughts on the matter.
I mean, just coming back, quick agriculture. I mean, I was very envious that Jamaica had the ability to say to itself and to agree that it is going to invest in its sugar industry. And I think that's one of the greatest faux pas of our economies and our economic, sorry. And I would not say no to a world where Trinidad and Tobago begins to have fitness. I mean, unfortunately for us, we tend to throw away things that have worked for us because we saw a hiccup in the international roadway and the international pathway. But I would not say no if we were to explore the opportunity of returning to some industry, and because we are seeing where the merger of the agrarian industry and industrialization is benefiting nations around us, and we should be paying attention to that.
Yeah. All right. We do have a caller. I'll see if we could sneak in the second topic because it wouldn't take that long. But we do have a caller right now, so we'll take the call first from Arima. Caller, good morning. Can you hear me?
Small morning.
Morning.
Morning, you hearing me?
Yes, I'm hearing you. Dr. Mohammed, you hear me, caller?
Very clearly.
We're hearing you, caller. Go ahead.
All right. Good morning to you and your guests. Now, I'm listening to the discussion, right? And I want to add my 2 cents there. Now, in business, we have like cost-benefit analysis. We have SWOT analysis. I have an analysis that is called CESS, C-E-S-S, cause, effect, symptom, and solution. And if this country has to go ahead, one of the things the central bank has to do is to simply buy back Trinidad and Tobago's currency, especially from our trading partners in the Caribbean. Because these islands don't accept TT currency because they have no way of spending it. So what is the sense of telling me we join in BRICS and some of our main markets here don't want to accept our money because we ain't buying it? And next thing too, when we talk about diversification, take for example shipbuilding and ship repairs and transport in the region. My wife paid $1,900 to go Grenada one way a Wednesday evening. At $1,900, she could have go Miami and come back possibly twice. So when people come to sit down and tell you, well, you know, this is the plan, or that is the plan, or that is the idea, nothing wrong with that. But we have to sit down and look at the situation and look at what is the main cause. And the main cause is because the Trinidad and Tobago Central Bank does not buy back TNT currency. When we start that, in my humble view, we are on the way towards diversification and the way towards increasing trade, improving our balance of trade, improving our reserves. Because you can't have St. Vincent and Grenada and Antigua not wanting TNT currency because they can't spend it. Have a good morning, gentlemen. Thank you.
Thank you, caller. Well,
that's my point.
Foreign currency is a bit more. The thing is, foreign currency exchange, you could try to say, all right, we'll just use this currency and we'll convert to that currency, right? You could try to eliminate the exchange part of the equation. You'll still have an issue because it's the flow of money. If money goes out and money doesn't come in, you'll still have an imbalance, right? And to some extent now, the use of our currency in foreign trade, why would people want to trade in it?
Well, we have to take into consideration as well that the Indian rupee only became internationally accepted and internationally to be, but it recently happened, right? And that we should have. I've always questioned.
Dr. Mohammed? You're breaking up a little bit.
Currency is so low in value, but yet economists and others have boasted about the robustness of our economy. So, and I feel like common sense tells me that the robustness of an economy should be directly linked to the value of its currency. If someone in economics could dispute that, and then I stand to be corrected.
Well, Dr. Mohammed, I mean, the example of that not being true would be Japan. Their currency was inflated to high heaven, and you pay for things even domestically in thousands of yen just for everyday products. So one of the interesting things is even the argument for devaluation, right? There are pros and cons to it. We can't necessarily experience the pros without a manufacturing sector that exports. And I guess at the end of the day, I mean, one of the interesting things though, since we export a lot to the Caribbean, I kind of don't understand why they're not willing to trade in our currency, unless we also are not willing to accept our own currency as payment for goods that we sell them. Because I don't know how much we import from them, so trade would be relatively balanced, right? So
I was confused. Prime Minister Gonzalez, I have a lot of respect for the man, but he confused me with that bill that he talked about and we are owing them. And I'm like, how?
We do import food stuff from them.
We do, but no, it's not what we import, it is how did we rack up a bill of that magnitude and did not pay the country? I mean, I don't know if Amy Brown, as a former minister, could explain that for us. I mean, I have a high regard for him as a foreign affairs minister, but we need to figure that out because is it that Prime Minister Gonzalez is having a conversation with Prime Minister Rowley and he was getting brushed off? What is the story? But it seems as though that the region has suddenly now thrown all of its woes that it has experienced over with the last administration on the current prime minister and say, well, come now, you need to fix this, and this, and the other, and the other, and the other, and the other. But I think what countries don't realize is that, and you made a really good point. Yes, we like to party. Yes, we are, we have a good time. Yes, we do this. We carnival, blah, blah, blah. But coming here and living in Trinidad and Tobago, cost of living is still very high. We need to seriously address the cost of living for Trinidad and Tobago. We have to seriously address why is it that prices of goods are so inflated. This is ridiculous though.
The thing is, we have limited domestic production, and it's also an economies of scale thing. So like certain things would be very expensive in certain small towns and large countries, or just because, like, listen, you live in some small town in America, you have to pay a similar price ticket to go to the same cities we have to go to see certain high-end specialists, right? You live in Los Angeles, you have to fly to the East Coast of America to see certain specialists. So with healthcare is one example of just the scale of it. You can't have high-end cardio and cancer hospitals in every city of 1 million people, right? And that's just one example. If we, as a region, we each specialize in some aspect economically, it could essentially then, if, let's just say we specialized in, Jamaica's doing cane sugar, so we say we're gonna do peppers, or we're gonna do chocolate, or we're gonna make air conditioning here, right? The domestic market will, in a theoretical sense, not be just Trinidad and Tobago, but could be the whole region, right? And then it will allow the production scale to increase, and then you get economies of scale. It could hopefully allow for the prices to be relatively less because we don't have to import certain things from further distances. But that challenge, when Caribbean leaders talk about the inter-island cargo ferry service, that's the trick, right? That's the stumbling block, or one of them, where we need to kind of figure out a solution to that. Otherwise, it's a moot point. So because we're this small Trinidad and Tobago and we have limited manufacturing and we have to import everything, we do have this weird effect on our economy because of the scale, because of the importation, and the oil money compensated for it in the past. But, you know, things not so simple anymore. That energy dollar is not flowing so freely as it used to. So
and therefore, you know, we have no cushions. We have no cushions. That's the sad part about it. We should have had some cushion that we could have fallen on. And I feel like we didn't think this out through properly. And I still say that, look around, countries are doing pretty well, those countries that have the ability to do it. And in fact, no, let me correct myself. There are nations from the Western Hemisphere all the way to the Far East that are very, very, very lucrative, very lofty, have very lofty economies. But if you examine their economies, there is a level of actual industrialization taking place, as well as agrarianism, and as simple as corn.
We have another caller. We'll continue the conversation, but we have Digger Martin. Interesting to see what he's going to come with next. Digger Martin, you're on the line. Sorry for the wait.
Good morning, and good morning to your co-host, Dr. Shane Mohammed. A quick comment on what you are talking, but I really want to talk about the TTPS. A quick issue. A Calypso, 3 blind mics by Chalk Dust. People should, 3 blind mics, should listen to that. And the CARICOM Travelers Check /$. Why that fail? Those are critical things where CARICOM wasn't on board with Trinidad in philosophy and execution with seamless travel kind of thing. Listen to those two things and try to understand that. The police service, I want to commend what I am seeing with the TTPS. And I'm going to say attitude is a key to the success of any team or any person. The new commissioner of police has an attitude I am in sync with. And I know for a fact, okay, let me put that. His action tells me that he has associated his attitude with similar sort of attitude with officers within the TTPS. And as a result, we are seeing really good outcome based on his strategies. The 2 kidnappings, the escape of the prisoner, what we are seeing, rapid response with an outcome that satisfies a large percentage of the population. And that, to me, tells me we are on the right track with respect for mitigating crime. The other issue now is to address the manpower with respect to officers within the police service who have a similar mindset to the new commissioner of police. As I've also said, the leadership directly under the commissioner of police needs to be held account for their past and previous actions. A birdie has whispered to me that This new minted commissioner of police did what I expect a leader to do. He visited the policeman and his son, the wife of the recent accident, in intensive care. That tells me he is a caring leader with an attitude supporting his charges. You don't want something better than that. And I'm hoping I'm going after the president addressed the police service commissioners. I believe they are doing an injustice to the police service and to some of the officers who have already shown they are capable of being catapulted into the leadership. I'm gone. I'm saying no more. Have a nice day, people.
Thank you, caller. I'll say this. I think the commissioner is doing what he's supposed to be doing. And if it seems as though this is no comparison whatsoever, right? Now,
No,
to
it's
some
not.
extent, he is doing a good job, but part of it is, to be quite frank, what should be expected of anyone in that position. I'm not going to say it's all that. I'm not going to say it's all like, oh, that's the baseline. But a lot of what he's doing should be the baseline, because at that kind of CEO type level, everything you do is supposed to be extraordinary and is supposed to display a certain level of excellence, because you can't afford to slip. One slip and then a lot of bad things happen. If it's a private business, it could lose a lot of money. If it's something like the police service, people could end up dead. So kudos. It seems so far that this might be one of the best elections of commissioner of police that we've had in quite some time. He hasn't proven to be excellent at every aspect, but he's showing us a lot more willingness than, say, his predecessor to do the groundwork.
Yeah, no, I agree. And Kola made a very good point. One of the critical things or critical characteristics of good leadership or effective leadership is behavior. And behavior having the behavioral traits coming out of the behavioral traits theory is a very critical aspect that is directly linked to successful leadership. And one has to craft their leadership style to suit their organization. And I think, so for example, when he was speaking on the morning that he was announcing the state of emergency, I kept asking myself, reasonably so, because some of those questions that were posed to him I thought were unreasonable and not realistic from a national security and intelligence perspective. But there was nothing that the commissioner of police, in my opinion, said that caused me to question or to have a gap in my understanding of what we were being faced with or what we were faced with. And I think, and I have to come back, Sean, I have to come back to this. I feel as though today's Thursday, 24th, but I feel as though a large cross-section of Trinidad and Tobago still does not have a full understanding of the effects of the 1990 coup.
Yeah.
And if they did, and I would suggest to the chief education officer and his curriculum officers that one of the things that we need to reiterate to both primary, secondary, and to a great extent tertiary, because especially the politics aspect of the tertiary, that the 1990 attempted coup was a real thing in Trinidad and Tobago. People lost their lives. People were held, members of parliament and government ministers, including the deputy house speaker, were held captive by domestic terrorists, and the prime minister and others almost died. In fact, a member of parliament died as a result of a gunshot wound that caused him to bleed out. So we must be careful as to the narrative that, even in the most from the most intelligent minds, we must be careful that we're bordering politicizing something that warranted this level of, I mean, I'm sorry. If I'm the Commissioner of Police or the Minister of National Security or the Minister of Defense or the Prime Minister, you really think that part of my legacy or part of my daily basis must be that I must be concerned consistently that there's a threat to my life or a potential threat to my country or to my people? I mean, I've seen in quarters where, you know, we ain't see the results of it yet, but things are happening, and there's a level of accountability from those that are responsible for executing and operationalizing the outcomes of this state of emergency. In fact, I am looking forward to seeing what the debate looks like on Monday when there's a debate in the Parliament. And again, it has to be something serious that we are taking for granted as a people, because we clearly live in utopian world and la la land where we enjoy, as much as we complain about crime and as much as we complain about criminality and all of these issues, we generally live a happy life. And it seems as though we take for granted that happy life, believing somehow that every single politician has a sinister plan to, you know, utilize an apparatus of the state for their own benefit. And that's not necessarily so.
Well, I do actually have a comment to tie both those points together. What you said about the questions from reporters and how everything is viewed with this political lens of political corruption. But we do have Arima back on the line to respond to something. So we'll take this call first, and then I'll tell you what my thoughts were. Caller, either?
Yeah, sure. Morning. Morning again.
Morning.
I think we're missing the point. Because the purpose of BRICS was for countries to move away from using the US dollar as the main medium. Whoa, I got muted.
No, go ahead.
No.
Go ahead, caller. I can hear you.
What I was saying is this. The main purpose of BRICS is to remove the US dollar as the main medium of exchange in world trade and let countries trade amongst one another in their own domestic currencies. So you saying that we should join BRICS and all of that. The simple solution to that is this. The Central Bank of Trinidad and Tobago must start buying back TNT currency. Because if we have to put masters and pulling, you will see, just like earlier, you might get arrested and they don't no charge. Now, I would like you to tell me which one of our independent institutions are really independent of political control. You see, when we reach to that stage, so that the Commissioner of Police doesn't seem tainted, yeah, the Chairman of the Elections and Boundaries Commission doesn't seem tainted, the Chairman of the Judicial and Legal Service Commission and all these independent commissions are not seen to be politically manipulated, then we get in somewhere. Because we're talking about white-collar crime yesterday with Ms. Vanessa Sheriff. Members of the government are the biggest proponents of white-collar crime. And if you're in charge of the police, who's going to lock them up? Remember the last stint in the UNC government? Keep only telling you about the wheels of justice move slow. Well, look, Anna Roberts still there, free as a bird, and all this money went to waste in life sport, corrupt. Have a good day. Thank you.
Thank you, Ghana. I want to respond quick to both points. One, the currency does not matter with regards to balance of trade, right? The OECS could adopt TT dollars. There will still be balance of trade issues, which will basically, you will run into very similar, if not the exact same problems, just expressed a different way, because you won't have US dollars or foreign currency exchange or whatever, because of the flows of money, right? One side cannot just keep paying the other side, right? So usually with foreign exchange, it's expressed with the availability of foreign exchange and the ability to get foreign exchange. But you could change the currency, you'll still have those problems. And that's why I think the thing with BRICS and getting away from the US currency is to remove the threat of the US sanctions, right? But I think the flip side to that's what some of those countries don't realize is you will then potentially strengthen the US manufacturing sector. And are they ready to compete with that? Now, the thing is with the independence of the Commissioner of Police, the only other good way to select a high office holder is to directly elect them. That will still make it political. You can have it independent, but it'll still be political, depending on how you do it. So I don't know if that's necessarily better, because the other thing is you do need to have some sort of unity between that office and the government, otherwise, because the government controls their budget. So the real issue there is the voting public not holding politicians to account.
Very good point. Very good point.
Dr. Mohammed, we have Trinity on the line. I think this will be the last call. There's more to talk about. We will take this call. Trinity, good morning.
Good morning, gentlemen. Can you hear me clearly?
Yes.
Yes.
Right. Okay, let's look at a couple things. CARICOM trade. Why CARICOM trade? There may be difficulties in CARICOM trade based on the fact that the CARICOM nations as individuals have entered into contracts with either institutions or the government in North America. So that is why it's difficult for us to settle on a single market economy with exchanges in the EC dollar and so on, because in case these guys fail, or in the mind of the Dominicans or the Vincentians or the Barbadians, in case there's a shortfall in our trade and our support for the smaller nations, they can always look to the north for help. And you all remember the Caribbean Basin Initiative of many years ago that was purely designed not to put a wedge in CARICOM, right? We have to move from a worker ants argument to a global argument. Worker ants, among ourselves, we talk about our currency, our trade deficits among CARICOM nations. But the Western powers are actively working to keep us divided. And if you transfer that now to what is going on the African continent, the Western powers are actively working to keep the African continent divided to the point of sanctioning assassinations and coupling people. So we have to have a global understanding of what's going on, and we must understand it and know it. Our domestic policy, what we're trying to do domestically is correct, but we have not catapulted or reached that level of global understanding. The issue with Venezuela is not about elections. The issue with Venezuela is not about Maduro being sanctioned or anything. That is not the issue. The issue with Venezuela is the West will destabilize Venezuela until the people turn against the regime so they can put in who they want. The fallout of that is blood, sweat, and tears. The fallout of that is the pressure on our economy and our local institutions to absorb Venezuelans under one umbrella and keep them safe. That problem is a 60-year-old problem worldwide. So we had to forget worker ants argument and get ourselves to a level of global understanding of how the West works, how the developing regions are not allowed to develop. The only person I think who understands that in our region is the West Indies Prime Minister, Mia Mottley. She understands that in a particular way. You can tell by her utterances at the UN conferences and so on, right? So we'll talk more on other things tomorrow. I know your time running out. You all have a good day and stay safe.
You too.
Caller, the thing about sanctions, it's not meant for regime change. Sanctions have never brought about regime change. North Korea is what it is. The dictators will just pass on all the suffering to the people. What it does is it suppresses, I mean, in the harshest way, it's a punishment to Venezuela. It suppresses their economy. It suppresses their economic growth. North Korea was richer than South Korea until it wasn't, right? The reason why one of the incentives potentially is by suppressing Venezuela's economy, that mineral wealth, natural resources wealth is not then used to help enrich countries like China and Russia, which to some extent, you know, things have become more volatile and potentially hostile now than ever before.
Yeah.
And then, yes, Margaret Wade, I'll always index this entrepreneur from Senegal, I believe she's from. She points out heavily, foreign aid is basically dependency, right?
Yes,
and
it is.
we criticize it locally here, right? We see it happen domestically in the United States, and that's what it is internationally. And to some extent, I don't even think it's all bad intention, you know. It's just the road to hell is paved by good intention sometimes, and that's what this is. That's what foreign aid is. If it is foreign aid that is not meant to actually get us improve our situation, but rather just to kind of sustain us. Oh, foreign aid to help feed us. Well, that's giving us a fish. That's not teaching us how to fish.
Correct. Correct. No,
That's all. I don't know if you have anything to add, because I do have one other comment with regards
go ahead. Go ahead.
So, one of the things that I fear is that our press pool or our press corps, the reason why the questions were at times they're bad is we don't have a crime reporter, it seems, anymore. We don't have a political reporter, an economics reporter. We don't have people that will delve into these topics. I know that I think for newspapers, what they want are journalists that are quick to pick up any topic. But the problem is, at some point for national security things, for complex things, you need people to have a deeper understanding. And some of the questions could be because, look, they know the public wants these answers, and it might seem stupid to a technocrat, but it is what it is. And I myself have to do that at times. But I do feel like this is one of those things about economies of scale, that everything eventually, we just so accustomed to, and that's the thing, even the reporters have varying sizes of political lenses that they analyze everything through. Because politics kind of is the big thing, and everything else is a subset of that with regards to journalism in the country. And is that a good thing? I would argue yes and no, because it is kind of the nature of how our country runs. But at the same time, sometimes you do need a reporter to understand national security technical topics.
That's true.
And to hit it from that angle so that you get a proper, fair, wide-ranging, holistic reporting on an issue, and not just the political angles of whatever the issue is.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. I agree 100%, because I think it's very important that the level of reporting and the questioning that is put forward is it must be, one, sensible, but it also, and not, it must be astute, yes, but it must also not, you must not have to ask a question and then everybody in the room or those listening outside roll their eye and go, oh God, why you can't ask that question? Because there are certain questions you just cannot ask, right? I mean, national security and national intelligence for me is one of the most critical things in a country, and it's going to be the thing that makes or break a government. I mean, and a country, let's just go with the country, coming back to 1990. But, you know, I think one of the reasons, again, our history is not interlinked. And, you know, we've taken for granted the effects of that. But there are aspects of the society, there are citizens within our society, whether they were affected directly or indirectly by the 1990 coup. There are many people who do remember a lot of what would have, either they would have been looking on television and traumatized by it, or they knew someone that was directly involved in it and died or was injured, or families that were affected by it. And I think those persons, politics aside, there has to be a level of nationalism. And this is going to be controversial, but I feel like sometimes people use the word patriotism and people being unpatriotic as it's not something that, for political points is what I want to say, and to score cheap political points, right? But true patriotism is also understanding the things that are critical to the stability and security of a country and a nation and its people and its government. And we need to move away. And I'm hoping that the Cold War that existed between Kamala Prasad-Bissessar and Keith Rowley for the period 2015 to 2025 is now dead and gone, and that we've ushered in a new era where we don't have to have a politics of hate and disdain against each other in order for us to succeed or get our points across. But it's in the advent of social media, which did not really exist during the period of Patrick Manning and Bastille Pandey, there's a lot of hate that is getting spewed.
Yes.
Hate, racism, ignorance, arrogance, unintellectualism, that is existing in our social spaces. And I feel that people need to be a little more read, and they need to be, I mean, I would not lie, in the last couple of weeks, I've taken some serious licks from persons opposed to the government. But my question is this: why should I be quick to, if I was to be quick to rush out and to literally bark at the government for every little thing, then I'm going to lose the respect and regard. So, for example, with regard to the SOE, if I've gotten information or I've heard whispers of certain aspects of why an SOE is important for Trinidad and Tobago in this moment, because I think this SOE was a very unplanned one. It was nothing that we expected. Then, by God, I think there's a lot of intellectual persons who are professionals, who I would at least hope has a level of critical thinking, or attained a level of critical thinking by virtue of them attaining a bachelor's degree and upwards, that would make you think that something would really seriously warrant us getting under these conditions, because the SOE provides law enforcement with certain powers to dismantle certain organisms that very much has been a social nuisance and an economic problem, and to our country. So
yeah,
I don't understand why is it that we can't is it that we need a little bit of a reset of our thought pattern and our rational thinking, that I don't think politicians have time, at least I would hope not, to utilize the SOE as a playground.
Well, we have to wrap up. I'll just say a quick one. For people that's still on that, just remember the president is not aligned with the current administration, and she signed off on it. That is a significant thing for me, at least. Two, with regards to people maybe not fully understanding what it is that they're engaging with, Finland teaches media literacy. On top of all the other things I believe I said about their education system, that aspect we should probably start to look at very closely, because I have been saying for a couple of years now, media literacy is going to be threshold, not literacy. Media literacy is going to be the new threshold by which is the baseline society needs to function. And last I'll say is this, with regards to the coup, your warning is, I think, more profound than people realize. Back then, think about where we were culturally, nationally, patriotically. Our identity as a people, I think all of those things were stronger back then, and we had a coup then. And think about the political antagonism between parties and politicians, but also their supporters.
People.
Just people in general, exactly. Think about it. We could see something just as bad, if not worse, happen again because of our weaknesses in our culture, our society, and how we view our party and ourselves as one people. We don't view ourselves, I argue, as one people anymore.
I agree.
I don't see it. We are divided far too much. Dr. Mohammed, thanks for joining me.
Thank you.
I want to thank all the callers for calling in. Interesting discussion points on, in some cases, impromptu parts of the discussion. Folks, this is talking about the WESN. Let me encourage you to remember your allegiance to the Republic and to each other, because a twin island republic of one people. Do we really still believe that and want that? I hope we do. Stay safe. Never forget, it's nice to be nice. Even if you feel that you are divided to the person in front of you, still be nice to them. And hopefully we could bridge that gap so that we could see each other tomorrow. Bye-bye.
WESN.
My name is Dr. Stephen Carroll, the CEO at Community Hospital of Seventh-day Adventist, and we are committed to making good private healthcare affordable.
For all your medical needs, including dental, radiology, laparoscopy, behavioral and mental health, along with many other services, contact us for more information at 235-5479.
Community Hospital of Seventh-day Adventist,
where good private health care is affordable.
Low energy? Heart concerns? Migraines slowing you down? It's time to take control of your health. Join Wellness Unlocked, the series that brings expert advice and real solutions for a healthier you.